Okay, alright, part two, you know what's up? I was talking about the actual structure of the brain herself. She gets her own video. Okay, so there's this big blob in your head called the brain. There's two hemispheres, there's the left and the right hemisphere. We'll go specifically into what they are later on. But there's the left and the right all connected by the corpus callosum. There's a big ass guy he's colossal, and his name is Corpus, and he connects both hemispheres. Um, there's the cerebral cortex, also called the cerebellum, which is the outermost layer. It's the tissue. It's like basically the squiggles you see in all those drawings. There's four lobes inside the cerebral cortex. There's the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, and the temporal lobe. The frontal lobe, the front of your head, is basically for problem solving. Frontal lobe has to do with cognitive thinking, has to do with earthing good, with decision making, reasoning, planning, all this good stuff. Then there is the parietal lobe, P-A-R-I-E-T-A-L lobe. It basically deals with touch, pressure, temperature, pain, partial pressure. That's how I remember it. Then there's the occipital lobe, occipital lobe. It deals with vision, pretty self-explanatory, recognizing shapes, shadows, etc. Then they reach the temporal lobe. You hear the tempo of a song. It deals with sound. It deals with memory of sound and the visual pattern recognition. But that's pretty Now we go to the brainstem. You don't see like a visual. You just like my notebook. So the brainstem. She is the oldest part. She is huge. She is a dinosaur. There is a bunch of parts. So let's take this like a champ. There's the medulla oblongata. You are obligated to respirate. You are obligated to breathe. You are obligated to have a heartbeat. It regulates everything. It regulates all the body, regular function. Then there are the pons. The pons are the relay station. The pons are basically like, you know when you play chess, the little pons that you throw them out or whatever. No, not here. They are important. Then in the midbrain, it's the middle of the brain, so you would think it's like, oh my god, it's above the pons. It basically is with vision, movement, hearing, muscle coordination. It basically does everything. It does all the main basic functions. It's the middle of everything. The cerebellum deals with the fine motor, coordination, balance, posture. That's basically a little ball next to a stick. The reticular information basically filters out information. It overall creates knowledge. It's a network that carries messages along the brainstem. The reticular activation system, RAS, is part of the reticular information. It controls sleep and waking. The limbic system. She's great. She deals with pleasant and unpleasant emotions. There is the thalamus. Your thalamus basically is the relay station between the brainstem and the cortex. Your thigh hurts, so you must stop. Thalamus, you stop in the thalamus for the break. The hippocampus deals with memory, storage for long-term memory. When you see hippocampus, girl, you're gonna remember that. The amygdala deals with danger, adrenaline, hypothalamus. The hypothalamus, don't confuse with the thalamus because I'll kill you. Hypothalamus and the thalamus, very differently. Or the hippocampus, whatever, you know what I mean. Okay. Hypothalamus basically deals with hunger and fullness. We'll talk about those two later on too. Don't you worry, child. It works with the how's it called? Endocrine system. It deals with hormones, sex. We'll talk about her later. The nucleus accumbens, cucumber. I don't know. Nucleus accurbens. In the frontal lobe, it deals with learning habits, cognition process, learning basically. And now we're talking about the two different brains. Remember how I told you it was the left and the right? And I'm like, we're coming back to her right now. The left brain deals with cognitive thinking, your math, your reading, your school, everything that your mom wants you to do in life. Logical, verbal, and linear information. Then your right hemisphere, girl, she is all fun, she's party, she's the weekend, she's wild, she's free, she likes to do finger painting. She deals with creativity, with global, and she deals with intuition, with spider. She also deals with recognizing faces. You know, when you're at a bar, you're like, oh my god, that girl, I saw her from last week party. She's a junkie too. I'm kidding, don't do drugs. Split brain research. That's basically your brain is split in two. The corpus callosum, remember her? Yeah, she's not there anymore. She's too big. She left. It was discovered by Roger Sperry and Michael Goss. I don't think she'll ask it. If she doesn't, someone I hate you. But I don't. It basically shows how both parts of the brain receive the information, but they don't interpret it equally. They don't connect it. It's basically this whole thing. They're probably asking a question like, if you see a cat on your left head and then you see that, I don't know, I got these questions wrong. We should ask her more. We should ask her more about this. I'm not 100% sure about it. Hemispherectomy and brain plasticity. Hemispherectomy is basically when they take a whole hemisphere out, but due to neuroplasticity, it's able to recover and helps. Neuroplasticity, once again, is basically that it's able to recover. We talked about this before. The brain processes. How do you brain process information? You have to, for planning, use the frontal lobe. For feelings, it's sensations. So you get the sensory nerves to the peripheral nervous system, to the spinal cord, to the brain. So sensory nerves, peripheral nervous system, spinal cord, and the brain. For the and then it goes to the thalamus to process information, to the somasensory cortex to interpret it, and then to the cerebellum keeps you chilling. Your motor cortex, your cerebellum, does the conscious stuff. Okay, now how to understand the brain? The brain. We have a bunch of ways. The brain's super complex, but we're trying our best to deal with her because she's that girl. So we have case studies, which basically we talked about this last unit. We have specific people who we observe very specifically in order to we study one specific person in order to be able to abroad it to other people. So, for example, the Phineas Gage experiment, which is this nigga that got like a thing up his nose in his left brain, and like he got fucked up, and that's how we learn like the two sides of the brain and what they do in neuroplasticity, and then going back. Okay, I'm sorry. I remember in the back in the brain part. I don't know what to talk about it here because I should talk about it here. There's the Wernicke's area and the Broca's area. Broken Boca. It talks about language. You talk to your Boca. And the Wernicke's area talks about language comprehension. You're comprehending the words. Wernicke's. Come on, girl. You're catching on to this pattern. You're catching on how I study. Damaging, stimulating parts of the brain. What happens if your brain's damaged? There's ablation, which is removing or destroying brain tissue, and then there's lesions, which is tissue damage behind. The prefrontal lobotomy is basically taking out the prefrontal lobe. Pretty self-explanatory. Deep brain stimulation is when you stimulate the brain deeply. And transitional magnetic stimulus, TMS, is when you get like a little deep brain stimulated electrically. I don't know, girl. Ask someone. Brain scanning. She's a beast. She's great. Listen to her. There's X-rays. X-rays deals with bone and solid things. Think of like XXX penises when they're hard and whatever. You know what I mean. I don't want to say it, so Miss Lombana might watch it. Electro and I'm just gonna say the nicknames. EEG. EEG is basically electrical activity in the brain. It records waves and electrical activity in comparison to normal. So basically, it measures the electrical activity of the brain in comparison to other normal ones. So basically, sleep patterns, etc. And MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, magnetic, deals with the magnetic field and the radio waves to see soft tissue. So, for example, you will see show stroke, show tumors, stuff like that. Then there is the functional magnetic resonance, the fMRI. fMRI basically shows blood flow, oxygen to the brain, identifying parts of the brain, and activity. Computer axial tomography, a CAT scan. It takes 2D images from every single angle and it makes a 3D image. Basically shows different parts of the brain and basically identify muscle and bone disruption. For example, you can see a tumor, you can see a blood clot. Then there is PET scans, which they put electrical trackers in your brain, and then it basically shows which parts are active when you're doing X amount of tasks. The endocrine system. The endocrine system and genetics. Endocrine system basically controls your poopy. Hormones are basically sent to the bloodstream by all these different types of endocrinistic things. The hypothalamus works with the pituitary gland in order to regulate this thing. Keep in mind the endocrine system, it's slower but it's more powerful than regular hormones. So if you hear this and it might repeat stuff that the regular parts of the brain did, they do repeat. They are like neurotransmitters, but they're daddies. Like they're way stronger. So there's the pituitary gland, which deals with stress, growth, reproduction, pregnancy, childbirth. It talks about testes, ovaries, and thyroid gland. It releases too much hormones. If the pituitary gland releases too much hormones, you have a gigantism, which when you're too big, or dwarfism when you're too small. The thyroid gland releases thyroxine, which affects the metabolism. It increases blood, cell tissue, organ system. If damaged, you'll get poor sleep, lack of concentration, fatigue, depression, and dry hair. Who wants dry hair? The pineal gland releases melatonin, which deals with sleep. The adrenaline gland, hello. Gonads develop sex characters such as your penis and your vagina. I'm kidding, that wasn't girl. Your penis and your boobies. Behavior genetics. So genetics, we're basically going to talk about how genetics and how the environment affects this. So there's behavioral genetics. Basically, biological gut behavior. Okay, biological behavior is getting behavior from your body, and environmental is how your surroundings affect you. There's the genome, which is basically hereditary information, and then there's the phenotype. The phenotype is the characteristics you develop as you go. There are chromosomes, 46 overall, 23 from each parent. Inside of that, there's DNA. DNA is really like intricate thing, just like it's basically like your the blueprints. Genes are a bunch of DNA strands put together. Dominant genes like black hair, they're more likely to come. Recessive are less likely to come. Genes environmental. This basically talks about how the environment affects your genes. There is many theories how the either the environment affects you or your genetics affect you, which one grows you to be you. In reality, they both have an equal share. In case they ask you this, they're asking you in baloney. Some genetics are activated by the environment when needed. There's this thing called sensitive period or the critical period, which is sensitivity to the environmental influence. Conrad Longus studied the ducks and basically how when they first come out of the womb, they're going like out of the egg, they're going to follow the first thing they see. Then there's temperaments, which basically shows how to react in effect to the environment. Reciprocal determinism, which talks about the way that we how the way that we are is affected by the environment. Twin studies basically get two twins, see how genetics really affect the way that people grow in comparison to this. For example, they'll get two twins that grow up in completely different homes, and they'll see that they still have very similar traits. It's very weird. It's like such a weird thing, but it was super useful work when developing these theories. Hereditary, which is basically a degree in which your traits are inherited. Not everything is just inherited. Then there's evolutionary psychologists. They're basically like Darwin's, which believe that the way that we are is shown by the way that we were created, and we did things based on adaptation, evolution, and natural selection, and all that stuff. And genetics, mutations, some are good, some are bad. The good ones stay, the bad ones left. Hope you had fun.